Ladies and gentlemen, we gather today to confront a chilling and profoundly disturbing narrative, the life and crimes of Herbert Richard Baumeister. This is not a story for the faint of heart, nor is it one that offers easy answers. It is a journey into the darkest recesses of the human psyche, a study in the insidious nature of hidden violence, and a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked psychological disturbance. We must delve deeply into this case, not to sensationalize or glorify, but to understand, to learn, and to strive to prevent such horrors from ever occurring again. Herbert Richard Baumeister was born on April 8, 1947, in Indianapolis, Indiana. His childhood was marked by a profound sense of isolation and social awkwardness. He struggled to connect with his peers, exhibiting a pattern of withdrawal and detachment that would persist throughout his life. From an early age, he displayed behaviors that raised concerns. He was described as introverted, prone to daydreaming, and often lost in his own world. School records indicate a lack of engagement and a tendency to drift mentally. He was perceived as different, an outsider who struggled to navigate the complexities of social interaction. His family life, while seemingly conventional, was fraught with underlying tensions. His father, Herbert Baumeister Sr., was perceived as emotionally distant and unavailable. His mother, Mary Baumeister, struggled with her own mental health issues, creating an emotionally unstable environment. While physical abuse was not reported, the emotional climate was far from nurturing. Specifically during his adolescence, Baumeister began exhibiting disturbing behaviors that went largely unnoticed or dismissed. There are accounts of him dissecting dead animals, a classic red flag often associated with future violent tendencies. These incidents, while alarming, were often attributed to childish curiosity or a morbid fascination. As he entered his teenage years, his social isolation deepened. He struggled to form meaningful relationships, and his academic performance declined. He was described as a loner, a misfit who seemed unable to connect with the world around him. This period was crucial in shaping his psychological development, fostering a sense of resentment and detachment that would fuel his later actions. The lack of healthy social interaction, combined with a potentially unstable home environment, created a breeding ground for his darker impulses. His internal world, fueled by fantasy and perhaps a growing sense of rage, began to diverge sharply from the reality he presented to the outside world. Baumeister's ability to maintain a facade of normalcy was a testament to his manipulative nature and his capacity for deception. He married Juliana Saylor in 1971, a decision that seemed to provide him with a framework for a socially acceptable life. They had 3 children, and he established Savant Systems, a successful consulting firm. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic life, a darker reality was unfolding. Juliana reported increasingly bizarre and disturbing behavior. He would disappear for hours, sometimes days, without explanation. He developed a fascination with violent pornography, particularly sadomasochistic material. He exhibited mood swings and erratic behavior, often becoming withdrawn and unresponsive. Crucially, his sexual behavior was deeply concerning. Juliana reported instances of unusual and disturbing sexual demands, which she found frightening. This, combined with his late-night disappearances, created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion within the family. He often pressured her to partake in very violent sexual acts that she refused. His business success provided him with a cover, a way to explain his absences and his erratic behavior. He was the successful businessman, the devoted husband, the caring father. This image allowed him to operate in plain sight, to hide his true nature from those around him. He used his wealth and social standing to deflect suspicion and maintain his carefully constructed image. The ability to maintain this double life is a hallmark of many serial killers. It requires a high degree of control and manipulation, a skill Baumeister possessed in abundance. He was adept at compartmentalizing his life, separating his public persona from his private darkness. The disappearances that began in the early 1990s targeted young men, often from the gay community, who frequented Indianapolis bars. The victims were often vulnerable, seeking connection and companionship. They were lured by the promise of sex and companionship, only to be met with torture and death. The police investigation was hampered by several factors: The victims were often transient or had limited social networks, making it difficult to trace their movements. The prevailing social stigma surrounding homosexuality at the time also contributed to a lack of urgency in the investigation. There was a systemic bias within the police force that delayed investigations. Juliana Baumeister's growing suspicion played a crucial role in uncovering the truth. She found bones and human remains on their 18-acre property, Fox Hollow Farm. She confronted her husband, and during this confrontation, he admitted to having problems. He tried to convince her that he was burning trash. The subsequent search of Fox Hollow Farm was a harrowing experience. Investigators found the skeletal remains of at least 11 men, scattered throughout the wooded area. The remains were often fragmented and burned, indicating a deliberate attempt to conceal the evidence. The bodies were not buried, but rather scattered across the property. Forensic analysis revealed that the victims had been subjected to torture and sexual abuse. The evidence pointed to Baumeister as a serial killer who lured his victims to his home under the guise of consensual sexual encounters. He created a soundproof room in his house, where he conducted the murders. His method of operation was consistent. He would pick up men at gay bars, bring them back to Fox Hollow Farm, engage in sadomasochistic acts, and then murder them. He would then dispose of the bodies on the property, attempting to destroy the evidence. He often used strangulation as a method of murder. The sheer scale of the crimes and the methodical nature of his actions revealed a deeply disturbed and dangerous individual. He was a predator who preyed on the vulnerable, a monster hiding in plain sight. Understanding Baumeister's motives requires a careful examination of his psychological profile. Experts suggest he exhibited traits of several personality disorders, including antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and sadism. His antisocial personality disorder manifested in his lack of empathy, his manipulative behavior, and his disregard for the rights of others. His narcissistic tendencies fueled his need for power and control, while his sadism provided him with a twisted sense of gratification from inflicting pain. He enjoyed the feeling of dominance. His targeting of vulnerable individuals from the gay community suggests a deep-seated hatred or prejudice, combined with a calculated assessment of risk. He knew that these victims were less likely to be missed and that their disappearances would be less likely to attract widespread attention. He had a deep hatred of homosexual men. The sadomasochistic nature of his crimes points to a profound sexual dysfunction, a merging of violence and sexual gratification. This suggests a deeply disturbed individual who derived pleasure from inflicting pain and taking life. His sexual desires were deeply intertwined with violence and control. It is vital to reiterate that mental illness does not excuse Baumeister's actions. However, it provides a framework for understanding the complex interplay of factors that contributed to his descent into violence. He was a product of his environment, his psychological makeup, and his own choices. The Baumeister case left a deep scar on the Indianapolis community. It exposed the vulnerability of marginalized groups and highlighted the need for greater awareness of mental health issues. It also exposed the systemic failures of the police department. It also prompted a reevaluation of police investigative procedures, particularly in cases involving missing persons from vulnerable populations. It showed how important it is to take all missing person reports seriously. The story of Herbert Baumeister is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of violence, the complexities of the human psyche, and the importance of vigilance. By remembering the victims and learning from the mistakes of the past, we can strive to create a safer and more just world. We must not forget the victims, and we must learn from this horrific case.